Ever since they released the live action version of the Avatar: The Last Airbender, I've actually been wondering, what would have occurred if Tanjiro was actually the Avatar? What would his starting element be? And how would it even affect the entirety of the story? I think most of you understand that adding abilities without massive, nerfing kind of helps Tanjiro just bypass the majority of the story of Demon Slayer. But I would still like to talk about how I think Tanjiro would go about things and how things would kind of coexist throughout this time. Now, for starters, I want to say nobody else is going to be able to bend. Nobody's going to be able to use any bending styles, stuff like that. If I do that, then we're also talking about a bunch of Demon Slayers that have different bending techniques that would make them extremely overpowered to the point that it would be probably very easy for them to defeat the demons. So it's just going to be Tanjiro. Tanjiro is going to be the sole bender, and he's going to start with one single element and continue on top of that. Now, for the very beginning of Demon Slayer, Tanjiro is going to be just a normal kid. He's going to be that normal guy that's, just hanging with his family and talking to them and spending time with his family and so on. But eventually during one night, he would begin kind of hanging around his father, and out of nowhere, Tanjiro would feel this burning desire within him. It's an odd feeling, but Tanjiro would begin to feel as if he could just release all of this fire at once. And soon, he would be able to do just that, punching toward the air as small flames would come out of his fists. He would be completely shocked by this. He would be massively confused on how he was even able to do that. I mean, seriously, how was he able to do something like that? But soon his father would begin to explain to him that there's been things about the history books about so-called people being able to bend. And initially they wouldn't believe that he would be the Avatar or anything like that, but they would believe that he's some sort of firebender. Now, this would shock his father and even Tanjiro himself, but as they continue to basically train and have Tanjiro be taught how to utilize his firebending, his father would eventually pass away like normal, but he would give his son, or Tanjiro Kamado, a lot of information on how he believes he could approach utilizing firebending. So this version of Tanjiro isn't actually using firebending through a source of hatred or anything like that. It's more of a source of freedom and also a source of just power in general. He uses his good nature as a source of firebending, which eventually would turn into a very potent fire that would burn on for a long time. Now, he would go throughout the rest of his life pretty basic because there's no point of him to use the firebending. I mean, maybe to help out, like lighting a fire or maybe doing something like that, and that could help his family actually gain quite a bit of money through charcoal or something like that. But overall, everything would go very similar, if not the exact same, all the way up until his parents would die. Or not parents, but his family, including his mother, would die. Now, he would find their bodies all more or less dead, and his sister Nezuko being the only one alive. And he was kind of extremely mad at himself because at the end of the day, he feels that he could have saved them. But we all know that he wouldn't have been able to do so. Now, this would lead them to actually finding Giyu Tomioka and fighting him. And as a way of trying to save his sister, he utilizes his firebending, which would completely throw off Tomioka. He begins to think that this guy is maybe some sort of demon or something like that, but quickly he realizes he's just a normal human. But how is he able to do something like that? How is he able to utilize fire? It's something completely wild, but he wonders maybe he's the key to stopping all the demons because, we all know that the sun is able to kill the demons. Maybe the fire that he utilizes is relative to the sun. But quickly he would realize, or Tanjiro would realize, that that is not the truth and pretty far from it. At least at the moment. Because when he finds a demon with his sister Nezuko, he would then try and hit it with fire. It would do damage and actually slow down the regeneration of the demon, but it wouldn't have the same exact effect as the sun. The fire itself would be way weaker, and unfortunately he wouldn't be able to actually injure the demon to a large degree. But luckily enough, Urokodaki is able to help him, so that's all good and dandy. But this is where things begin to change even more, because normally this is where he would learn how to use water breathing, but the principles of water breathing would allow him to actually and accidentally utilize water bending. Yes, water bending. Yeah, so he'll be able to firebend and waterbend already after maybe 8 to 10 months of just training, and he's able to utilize the water bending and also the breathing style of water breathing to his advantage. So much so that he's able to basically throw out different forms of ice and used ranged attacks with his sword and water breathing. Now this makes water breathing extremely OP, extremely overpowered, and it allows him to blast through the final selection with absolute ease. But in using this in the final selection, word would quickly go out to the Hashira and also Ubuyashiki, and when word gets out, it's quick to the punch. I mean, everybody is kind of scrambling, but at the same time, they're wondering, okay, how do we get this kid here as soon as possible? Because it's obvious that he's going to be very, very vital to what they want to do and very vital to the future of everybody. I mean, there's a good chance that they all die if they don't get reconvened with this person, aka Tanjiro, and they believe that he's going to be a big, big reason why they're going to be able to take down, well, Muzan, and then the future demons, of course. Now, of course, it's not that simple. I mean, they're not going to be able to just get Tanjiro to come because he doesn't know where the Hashira mansion is, and he obviously will have somewhat struggles of trying to get there as well. So he's going to go through a couple missions, you could say, and then eventually he would head over. So he would take on the early mission of the Swamp Demon, but I'm gonna be honest, with his waterbending, going through that little portal that he normally goes through, it would be pretty easy. I mean, straight up, he would be able to go through it, and he would have no struggle in terms of doing so. And on top of that, well, it would be just a basic thing for him to more or less do. On top of that, I mean, we're dealing with something like some kind of minorly weak demons, and he has pretty potent bending styles and a pretty potent bending technique. So he doesn't have really struggles or even trouble dealing with some of these demons. Now, he would eventually go off to the Hashira mansion, and he begins to speak with everybody there. I mean, all these people talk about, or is basically, well, for one, his sister, being the fact that she is literally a demon, but that's a whole nother story. But also the fact that he could bend fire and water. That's insane. How is he able to bend fire and water? But luckily, after some thorough digging, they're able to find some stuff about what this so-called avatar is, and they find out about the whole 4 elements thing, but also another step to it, that he's able to go into something known as the avatar state. Now, this is all rumored, and they have no idea how he will ever enter that, if it even exists anymore, but they do say that it exists, supposedly. Now, they don't know really anything about it, but at the same time, bare minimum, he's able to inflict more things on his breathing styles, making him vastly more powerful. And they do talk about actually introducing the ability to utilize maybe earthbending and also airbending, being that those things would be extremely beneficial for him. So they try to more or less teach him those things with the minor info they have, which makes it extremely hard. But luckily, in the world of Demon Slayer, they have quite a bit of time in terms of training, but they're not able to get, or he's not able to get, a grasp on either earth or airbending to a large degree. But luckily enough, he's going to have plenty of time to do that type of training very soon. But he's cut short because there's actually a mountain that is being absolutely ransacked with demons. And there's so many over there that a lot of Demon Slayers are just straight up dying. Luckily enough, they're able to head over, and Tanjiro is able to help out in exterminating all of the demons. And frankly, with all of the webs and stuff like that, that is perfect for him, because he's able to take out all the webs and the strings and stuff like that with his firebending, and he can just put out the mass fires with his water and kind of go back and forth with that. And well, he continues to kind of just destroy anything that needs to be destroyed, and he's a perfect support, even though we all know that the Avatar isn't necessarily a support, but he is a very good support at this moment. But quickly, when he takes on one of the demons, one of the lower level demons that are in that forest, he's able to find that it is pretty darn easy to take them down because of all of the elemental things that are dealing, or that he has currently. He's able to utilize his firebending to a large degree, even in a breathing style, and that's where he slowly but surely learns how to utilize sun breathing, remembering the dance that his father once did. Now, this is very beneficial, especially because he's able to kill one of the demons in that forest very, very easily with it, and he begins to put heavy focus on sun breathing itself, especially after more information would be given that sun breathing is literally the best breathing style, and every other breathing style is just a copy of it or a variation of it, making sun breathing the original and the best to actually eliminate demons. This is perfect because if he introduces sun breathing with his firebending, it makes it even stronger and allows his firebending to actually inflict massive damage on demons. Now, this is more or less turning into a Tanjiro being a firebender, but that's the reality of it. He's going to have massive advantage with his firebending to a large degree. Now, onto the other bending styles, or the other bending elements, and that would be earth and air. This would be the perfect time for him to start learning, because they're gonna have some downtime. He has some downtime before his next mission, and since there's a couple people there that are close to his age and are extremely injured and needing of better training, it's a perfect time for him to learn how to earthbend and also learn how to airbend. Being at airbending is going to be perfect for his travel or traversal, but also the fact that airbending might actually be one of the greatest support elements ever, because he's going to be able to more or less blow wind or blow air in certain directions and push other people, maybe stagger them, maybe amp up the speed around people and stuff like that. But overall, being able to stun people with airbending and being able to be pretty damn basically accurate with it would massively help throughout this time. Now, the Mugen Train would actually be something very, very easy, just because, well, Muzan doesn't even know about Tanjiro, because that never actually happens. He ends up not going to that city, but that doesn't mean Tanjiro won't eventually show up and speak with Lede Tamayao, because after the Mugen Train, and after all that is said and done, because that is a very easy arc without Akaza there, when they would actually meet up with Lede Tamayao, and this is where she would explain how basically he could cure his sister and stuff like that. And the reason why she even ended up finding him was because of the rumors of the quote-unquote Avatar, and she's been hearing stuff like that through the whole Demon Slayer Corp that she's been kind of, listening in on. And she would say that if he wants to cure his sister, that it's going to need quite a few things, and that's a lot of blood from high-level demons or demons from the 12 Kizuki. Now, this is a bit of an issue just because they did kill a couple of them and not get samples of blood from them, but she does say that it shouldn't matter necessarily as long as they can get some high-level demons. So demons that are of pretty high stature, it shouldn't matter as long as they can get them. And Tanjiro, with all four elements, more or less acquainted with, I would say he definitely has mastered firebending, waterbending, and also airbending because of the correlation with firebending. Earthbending, I could see it being relatively difficult, but overall, I think those three that I said, he definitely would have them basically mastered, and then earthbending would be on the way. I think with those skills, on top of the fact that he's been able to implement fire bending into his sun breathing, it's going to help him massively, and also make it so that the Daki Gyutaro fight is extremely easy. Yes, the 4 bending styles on top of his already ability to fight and utilize sun breathing would help him so greatly that he'd be able to probably take on Daki by himself like extremely easily, even without the Demon Slayer mark, awakening. But once that awakening happens, when facing off with Gyutaro, it's almost just over. He's able to absolutely use the most bending he possibly can, on top of utilizing his swordsmanship already. I mean, seriously, his mobility with airbending would be insane, and his ability to basically swoop in and take slashes and move freely throughout the air, because normally if you jump in the air and you try to hit somebody, you cannot dodge midair, but this is the opposite for Tanjiro. This just enhances his agility and speed, even without extra training and extra understanding of breathing styles. He's able to get blood from both Daki and Gyutaro, and yes, this isn't necessarily enough, but luckily in the next, literally the very next arc, he'll be able to get the rest of the blood they would most likely need, because he would actually take on or try to be involved in both the Gyoko fight and the Hantengu fight. Yeah, since he's able to manipulate waterbending and Gyoko is involving water, this is something that he can actually involve in, and he just straight up hard counters Gyoko. Yes, Gyoko might have some things up his sleeve that could kind of mitigate some of the waterbending, but having that help and having that support, yes, support from an avatar, kind of wild to say, but it is true. Having that support from a waterbending version of the avatar there would be extremely beneficial. I mean, extremely. And it would make it so that Musuro would have an easy time defeating Gyoko, and also Tanjiro will be able to get the blood from Gyoko and also Hantengu, because they're going to have an extra Demon Slayer helping out and an extra Demon Slayer to take down Hantengu, and they're able to get the blood from him as well and defeat them relatively easily. I mean, like I said before, Tanjiro's agility in the air and also his ability to move at pretty fast speeds and a boosted up version of sun breathing, Jesus, he's absolutely powerful and absolutely unstoppable, what it feels like. But we all know that Muzan at the end of the day cannot die via chopping one's head, and frankly, I don't think a juiced up sun breathing could even affect the fact that he can be killed via chopping his head off. I just don't think that is going to be implemented, and I don't think that would be the case here either. But the final arc, or the very final Infinity Castle arc, as usual, would be an interesting one, because Tanjiro and also Giyu versus Akaza would obviously be easier, but I think most of you want to hear how his bending would affect it. Obviously, the Akaza fight's a pretty easy one to say how it's going to affect. I mean, overall, you can slow down Akaza via maybe like ice, or like kind of like the water bending, but on top of that, he already has a more enhanced version of sun breathing, leading to Akaza getting his head chopped off pretty damn easily, because yes, I did say that Muzan would not be affected by the head chopping, but Akaza has always been able to be killed by getting his head chopped off, so I could see that happening a lot quicker than normal. And shoot, if you want to go as far as saying that, well, Akaza wouldn't be able to be hit because of his ability to dodge and sense intent, I mean, this is where, and a perfect time to introduce the avatar state for Tanjiro. Talk about intent, it doesn't matter anymore. The avatar state would allow him to enter a zone or a absolute state that would allow him to have enhanced movement, speed, bending, everything, and this would be an easy win for Tanjiro and Giyu against Akaza. Now, if he does have time to help others, I mean, we're talking about being able to help against Kokushibo with his bending alone. If he wants to stay away from him, believing that he's going to be extremely hurt if he tries to get close, that would benefit massively. Shoot, if you throw him in the ring with Doma, he has firebending, and we know Doma is involved heavily in ice, so that could heavily help throughout that fight as well. Like I said before, having all 4 bending techniques, or basically being the Avatar, would be a massive way to support every last Demon Slayer, including himself. Don't get it wrong, don't get it twisted, including himself. I mean, he would find massive benefits in that too. And yes, I know some of you may even go as far as saying, well, what about if he learned bloodbending, which would be kind of almost impossible for him to learn, because it's a technique that nobody will know, and also you need a full moon. And yeah, it's just a lot of hurdles you'll have to do. But if he did learn bloodbending somehow, shoot, that would be absolutely insane. Being able to basically stun some of these demons that have blood pumping through their veins, being able to stun them via just completely cutting off their movement, I mean, that would be so overpowered, and that'd be a completely different thing from start to finish. But that's beyond the point at this moment. We want to talk about the Muzan fight. The Muzan fight is, I would say, not heavily involving Tanjiro on the front line. It just not initially, because they do believe that him as a support and not dead would be more beneficial to them. You put him on the front line, if there's any chance that he dies there, it would be a massive blow to everybody, and also probably the only chance Muzan has to secure victory, other than flat out running and somehow getting away. But luckily enough, they have some very capable fighters left, because not all of them are extremely wounded or hurt. So with the support of Tanjiro, his airbending, waterbending, firebending, earthbending, anything you could think of, being able to stun, subdue, slow down, anything against Muzan, and firebending being able to slow regeneration even more because of his sun breathing. We're talking about an absolute lethal Avatar that is going to be able to slow down and subdue and also kill Muzan eventually when the sun would come up. And most, if not all, the Demon Slayers that originally die would actually still be alive in the end of this story. That's how overpowered just adding these elements would be, on top of the fact that if you give him the Avatar state and stuff like that, I mean, we're talking about a one-man wrecking crew, especially because we're still giving him the ability to utilize the breathing styles he normally does. Now, I will say, I'm going to be completely honest, like just straight up, if he's only able to use elements, I think this story is a lot different. I'm not going to sit here and explain the entirety of the story once again, but I do think the story is a lot different for the fact that we don't know how firebending truly is going to affect the demons. One side of it may be like, okay, well, have firebending affect the demons so we can kill them. Well, then if that's the case, then he can straight up kill any demon he ever wants to. Now, if firebending doesn't affect, then he's straight up a glorified support that if he gets touched by some of these demons that, by the way, are extremely fast, and no breathing styles, we're talking about a Tanjiro that is dead meat. Like, dead meat. Like, unfortunately, that's just the reality of it. We haven't seen, like, an Avatar necessarily be at some crazy mock insane speed, and a lot of these demons move extremely fast. And with no breathing style, that's kind of the effect. He won't be that fast. But with the breathing styles, yeah, he's overpowered. And there's a kind of hard to find the line between that as well. But it don't really matter that much. That's the end of the story, or that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed, make sure to show some love. Leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. This was What If Tanjiro Was The Avatar. I know these are different than most of my what ifs that I've ever done. I've said this probably a couple times. I kind of like doing these type of videos sometimes, where it's more of like this rant of like how I think the bending styles would affect, how I think you can involve the bending styles with the breathing styles and stuff like that. I'm not here to make some elaborate breakdown, because when you add powers like this, like I said before, it just amplifies the things Tanjiro can do. But with that said, I hope y'all enjoyed. Like as always, I hope y'all enjoyed. And yeah, that's all I gotta say. I hope all you guys have an amazing day. And don't forget to check out the rest my other content as well. But as always, have an amazing day. Peace out.